Welcome to McGuire on Wrestling.
What do you guys want to talk about?
Let's give the people what they want. Professional wrestling.
With Mike McGuire.
The happiest Canadian camper in the world.
Tell me when I'm telling lies.
Give me a hell yeah.
We are hot off the heels of WWE's Crown Jewel. Did you watch the show or not? If not, don't worry. We got a little bit of an update for you here on it, but some big things coming out of this past week in the world of wrestling. A lot of them WWE-centric because they just seem to have new thing after new thing after new thing this week. But we also have stories to talk about in AEW, independent wrestling, and a bunch more because this is what we do. That's why the show is called McGuire on Wrestling. Every week brought to you absolutely free of charge on the radio and online. You can find us at various radio stations supported by radio stations like 106.1 The GOAT. Find us on the online hub for 98.1 The Ranch and 94.1 CJOC. You can also hear the show on the radio like you might be hearing it right now every week on CKXU FM, where, again, we're so happy to be a part of the team there. And thanks, everybody that enjoyed the live show. I didn't get to say this last week, but the live show actually got a ton of great feedback, and it's kind of inspired the style for how I'm doing the show now, to be honest. A little less scripting, a little more conversation. Dave Meltzer's going to be here, as always. Plus, we're going to have Joe Aguinaldo come in for this conversation about who Goldberg's opponent should be for his retirement match. That is on the way, but of course, we always love hearing from you, my friend. You can find the show online, Team MOW, McGuire on Wrestling at Facebook. You can also find me at McGuire Show on all the social medias, and if you'd like to support the show, we never ask for it, but some people are kind enough to send tips, financial contributions. Again, it's not necessary for you to get all this content every week for free, but if you want to do that, there's a PayPal link at McGuireShow.com. Thank you to Maddie Smith for being a constant contributor. Thanks to a bunch of others who have also chipped in over the last little while here, and the show is just growing and getting bigger and better, and it's all because of people like you. So if you like the show, if you like what you're hearing, give us a follow, give us a subscribe. Shout out to people that listen to the show on YouTube as well. I don't feel like I give you guys and girls enough love there. But it was a really busy week for your pal Mike here. My day job at 98.1 The Ranch, we gave away a car, a truck, an SUV, I guess. So that was kind of cool. Then there was also a Halloween festivities. I hosted 3 different variations of Halloween parties. And if you need a good workout, I can't recommend enough strapping a 30 to 50 pound replica proton pack on your back. And then hosting a hockey game where you have to run around the stands all day with said proton pack on, or hosting Halloween parties at other venues with said proton. I got my steps in and then some, is what I'm saying. Most importantly, though, we just want to invite you to always be a part of the conversation here. If you got something you want to let me know about, fire me a message, McGuireShow@yahoo.com. I do reply to every email I get, but sometimes I don't get a reply back after that, which is super weird. So if you've been trying to get a hold of me and you're waiting for a response, check your spam folder maybe or something. I don't know. Anyway, coming up this week, we have a look at the WWE Independent Wrestling program that was announced and what that means for potential future stars. WWE has also let some names go. We'll find out what some of the decision-making process was behind that. A mainstay in a rising independent promotion has left the company, and Goldberg says he's getting his retirement match in WWE, and we've got an opponent suggestion that will blow your mind and needs to happen. That's all coming up, but first, let's take you through some of the biggest stories of the week. This is the 5 Count.
You want to hear the breaking news?
We start off with the sad news that some stars are going to be leaving the WWE roster. Tegan Nox, Indi Hartwell, and most surprisingly, Baron Corbin will all be leaving WWE. Tegan Nox and Indi Hartwell reportedly were released. Baron Corbin reportedly not getting a contract renewal. So we'll see what happens for those 3 moving forward. Dave Meltzer will have some of the details on that for us coming up. But Baron Corbin, if you've been following him on social media, seems to be really leaning in on cooking and especially working with meat products. So I'm wondering if he's getting into a line of distribution there, or maybe even looking at doing a restaurant. I don't know, but we'll see what the future holds for him. Tegan Knox and Indi Hartwell both saying they're planning on staying with pro wrestling. Sticking with WWE, their ID program was announced this week, where they're going to try and get closer to independent talents and keep their tabs on them as they progress in their career. Now, it's not being explained so much as a contract signing, but more an invested interest in certain talents and certain training schools. People always say, hey, where do I need to train to get into WWE? I mean, here in Canada, Lance Storm School was always a great place to go. Down east, of course, Scott D'Amore, a legendary trainer as well. And there's tons of other great schools out there, but these schools and these talents are going to be getting a certain degree of accreditation with the ID program, and we'll dive into that with Dave coming up as well. Rhea Ripley is legitimately out of action for some time now with a fractured orbital socket. She did post a picture of the x-ray on her social media, and it was worked into storyline during NXT this past Tuesday.
Rhea, watch your head. Rhea, watch your head. Come on. Get her up. Turn her up. Okay? Watch your head. Watch your head. Easy. Okay, Rhea?
Speaking of NXT, they are in the 2300 this Wednesday, going right up against Dynamite. The 2300, by the way, was known as the ECW arena. I probably don't need to tell you that, but there are people listening that are new to wrestling, so I thought we'd bring them in on as well. Anyway, the show is going to be ECW themed. Rob Van Dam, Nunzio, as well as Bully Ray or Bubba Ray Dudley, all confirmed to be a part of the show, as well as Dawn Marie making her WWE return as a special guest referee, and several other ECW alumni expected to be showing up. Did I just call little Guido Nunzio? What's wrong with me?
Bobby Lashley, a multi-time champion around the world. I cannot believe my eyes.
First time that we have ever seen this man on TBS. I've seen it all now, guys.
With Bobby Lashley's debut on AEW Dynamite this past Wednesday, a Hurt Syndicate t-shirt was released shortly afterwards. That is the official name of the faction. We kind of knew this coming, but nevertheless, MVP, Shelton Benjamin, and Bobby Lashley together as a trio for now. The initial feud seems to be with Swerve Strickland, and we'll see what goes on from there. But one thing's for sure, this is going to be a very, very interesting time for those three. Of course, the Hurt Syndicate, originally the Hurt Business in WWE, an act that carried WWE through much of the pandemic and then got shelved for reasons that still, frankly, don't make sense to this day. And regionally speaking, in Calgary, Alberta, coming up this Sunday, the alternate commentary table guys and I are going to be on location for Dungeon Wrestling's November Pain. Now, the card is headlined by Stu Hart Heritage Heavyweight Champion, the Masterpiece, Chris Masters, defending his championship against Raj Desi, a.k.a. the Great Jinder Mahal. Do not hinder Jinder, former WWE champion. Also, some great talent from across the board. Rohan Raja, who was here on the show last week, is going to be in a match against a guy named Sean Moore. You got Kid Chocolate in action and a bunch more. It's going to be a great show. And again, you can get tickets and more information at dungeonwrestling.ca. Still to come, we have an opponent for Bill Goldberg that will blow your mind and automatically make you want it to happen. Plus, Dave Meltzer is here as we go through some of the headlines and a lot more.
If you're here, you're a part of Team MOW. Join us on Facebook at Team MOW McGuire on Wrestling and get in on the conversation. This is McGuire on Wrestling.
From WrestleMania to SummerSlam to Halloween Havoc to Starrcade, wrestling had its golden era from the 80s through to the mid-2000s. Legends and Champions is where we open the vault. Legends and Champions comes to you as part of the McGuire on Wrestling Network each and every week. Get your midweek fix. You can get it from all good podcast providers just by searching for McGuire on Wrestling. Why wouldn't you? See you there.
It's time for the Wrestling Observer Insider with Dave Meltzer, McGuire on Wrestling.
Joining me with a stack of ballots surrounding him. No, we're not talking about November 5th. We're talking about the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame, which, again, Dave Meltzer oversees, but does not pick the recipients thereof, correct?
I do have one vote out of a couple hundred, though.
Well, this is the conversation.
But I do not.
every year.
I do not pick who goes in. Absolutely not. Yeah. There's always disagreements. Nobody ever is always. You know what I mean? It's like any Hall of Fame. There's the slam dunks who also don't always get in, but there's the slam dunks, and then there's the marginals that could go either way. And most of the guys on the ballot are good enough to be on the ballot, but most of them are marginal. I mean, there's only a few on this ballot that I would call slam dunks, and it's not a lot that any of them will get in because there's just a lot of divergence of opinion.
This might be a controversial statement, but who do you think is the person or tag team or act that has been robbed and deserves to be in the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame that hasn't made it in yet?
Well, it's hard to say because I think everyone who really deserves gets in. I don't know that anyone ever got robbed. I mean, the name that would pop in my head is Kyoshi Tamura. Okay. Because he was so good. But the thing is that he wrestled a very different style. He worked for a promotion called Rings in Japan they had a very interesting style. It was very realistic oriented. It was the most realistic looking pro wrestling that there's probably ever been in, since the 1920s or something, and maybe even more than the 1920s. I don't know. But the style died when MMA got big. So it's kind of like it's a style that went away. And then he never really went to other companies after Rings went away. I mean, it's like if he had gone to, say, New Japan Pro Wrestling or something like that, he might have had a career like Minoru Suzuki because he was so talented. So but as that went away, kind of like his fame went away. Like he was very close to getting in the first couple of years on the ballot, and then he slowly sank away to where, he had 15 years on the ballot and never got in. Volkan also had 15 years on the ballot and never got in. And he was a strong candidate, but I think Tamura was the stronger of the two. So he's maybe my one pick. And it's also the reason why I like to put people on the ballot, when they're 35 as opposed to like when they're 50, because if you're like a famous guy like Sting or somebody like that, or like Randy Orton will end up being like those guys, Sergeant Slaughter, they may take a while to get in, but their legacies will get them in. But if you're someone of a more of a niche person, once that window is, once people forget about you quicker, So I think for smaller promotion guys, it's better to be on the ballot early. For big promotion guys, it's not as much. But I also would rather people get evaluated in their own time as opposed to somebody else's time, because standards change, and it's like people today that are fans today, they can watch old matches and they can like them and not like them. But that doesn't necessarily mean they have the frame of reference to understand the programs and things like that. And, you could look at numbers on a piece of paper of attendance, and we all do, to study it. But, unless you lived through it, it's harder. I don't want to say impossible, but it's harder. Like I feel that I can evaluate the guys I've seen and the guys who I covered, and some legends, of course, because they're just so obvious. But like in a marginal guy, if I didn't see them or anything, it's imperfect. It's not a perfect system. But most of the biggest legends are all in and will always get in. It's like if you're The Rock or Stone Cold or even Bryan Danielson or whatever, those guys are all going to get in. It's the marginal guys, that Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, like they may not. I don't know, and it's probably too early to say for sure on either of those two.
Well, Sammy definitely making some waves for himself. We'll talk about Crown Jewel here coming up in just a moment. And Owens, too, honestly. Both of them had big showings at the Saudi show. But let's get down to some of the things making headlines before we get into Crown Jewel here. And it started off earlier this week, WWE announcing their ID program, which is their plan to support, quote, independent wrestling prospects and wrestling schools. Now, some of the schools that you would imagine are already falling under this program. Reportedly, Cody Rhodes' American Nightmare Academy is there. Booker T's Reality of Wrestling was the first one actually confirmed. And then Seth Rollins' Black and Brave Academy are now WWE ID schools. There's a lot of thought about this. Is this a good thing for independent wrestling?
I mean, that's something, it's almost impossible to know because you just don't know how it's all going to play out. It doesn't feel like it's a bad thing. I know that the basic situation is that if you're at one of those schools, before, this is actually similar to what they probably did about 25 years ago when Jim Ross first started the program. They didn't have a specific, they didn't have like a specific school then. OVW was like their big school, and then they sent some guys to Les Thatcher, and they sent some guys to Memphis with Jerry Lawler and Randy Hales. But I mean, the deal is that they would hear about independent guys, and if they got a buzz or something like that, Jim Ross would sign them, and then they would assign them. But it wasn't like they did have some tryouts and things like that as well. But it wasn't like it's like tryouts to come. It was tryouts to continue work in indies, although you'd be under contract and everything. This is a little different in the sense that it's the same thing in that, but instead of being offered, full-time, low-paying contracts, this is just some money. It's not enough to live on or anything like that, but it's some money. It's a contract. So it kind of gives you it gives WWE kind of a leg up on AEW when it comes to guys, whether it's in these schools or other places, that they can sign them for kind of a low deal. And then what happens is if TNA is interested, if AEW is interested, if New Japan's interested or something like that, WWE has the right to kind of like match the offer.
Okay.
So it gets in earlier than like saying, well, we're going to commit to a full-time job and move this guy to Florida. It's like, well, we see something in him. So let's get the leg up on that, and then support some of the schools that and make those schools, kind of try to build up those schools. So people who want to go to WWE will be more apt to go to certain schools rather than just any school that, if you've got like this WWE accreditation, so to speak. The idea is it probably helps get people to go to the school. So it's a good thing for WWE. I don't think it's a bad thing for wrestling at all, but you just have to see how it plays out because, with WWE, the fear always is WWE trying to control the independent scene. And when that happens, the independent scene usually falls apart. And that's not necessarily a good thing. So we got to, I don't think it's anything that's going to be a negative, but I don't want to say that for sure because there's many things that have been done, that you thought were going to be good for the business and ended up being kind of constricting the business.
It almost sounds, the way you're describing it, though, to me, is to compare it to like college sports or up here junior hockey, especially, is big on this. Kind of like a letter of intent sort of thing, where we hear players will be given these letter of intent opportunities to say, I would like to come here, or yes, I've agreed to come here. So would that be kind of the same thing as what this ID program is?
I mean, something like that. Not exactly, but something in, it's like, it's not a contract. It's not even a tryout, but it's a way to kind of have an affiliation. And if you do well, like if
first right of refusal, maybe.
Well, it is the first right of refusal. Yeah. It gives WWE the first right of refusal on guys getting started that may have a good look or may be really good. And the difference is, and this is actually more of a difference as far as WWE mentality. Before, when WWE would sign people up, they didn't want them working independent wrestling shows.
Right.
They wanted them to just work their own shows. This one, if they sign you up in this, you're encouraged to work all the indies that you can. I mean, for whoever. And you can even do like AEW tryouts and stuff. But they, like I said, they have the right of first refusal if you do it. You're not, and you can get out of the contract. I think that there's ways out, and all that. but it basically gives them matching rights to young people, but not taking them away from the indie scene until, if you get good enough on the indie scene, then they give you a contract and want you to come to, the Performance Center. Yeah, then they don't want you working indies anymore. Then you're under their control. But this is like, go work all your indies and go get experience, as opposed to, hey, you've got potential. We want to train you from scratch, which many people, they're doing. So it's a way to it's a way to have more people kind of on their radar without committing like $50,000 or $60,000 or $80,000 a year contracts to them to come to Florida.
In a way, it kind of makes sense. I mean, on the opposite side of the fence here, there was a time where Tony Khan was snatching up as many talents as he could and signing guys young and getting them right off the indies. But then we saw they would get on this overinflated roster. So I guess this is probably a smarter way from a WWE standpoint too. They can say, okay, we've got our fingers in this guy as far as interest goes, but we're not going to lock them down. We're not going to keep them off TV. We're going to let them go do their thing, right? And not that Tony does that either. I mean, a lot of his talents still get to work independents all the time, but this is just one step closer then, I guess.
Yeah. I think what it is basically for years and years and years under Vince, and even Paul Levesque, it was kind of like indies were shunned. It's like, you learn bad things in indies. We don't really want guys doing indies. And this is kind of like going like, you know what? A lot of good guys come through indies. Let's embrace indies. From that aspect, it's a much healthier thing. It's like, we acknowledge that not everyone that's going to make it here is going to start out as a Division I college athlete or somebody that they come in all shapes and sizes. Although I'm sure good sizes are going to be the guys who get the original contracts like it always is.
Let's move on. Again, a lot of WWE headlines this week here, so we'll bang through as many of these as we can. Another thing that came through, some names released from their deals or not going to be renewed. Baron Corbin, probably the biggest star, the one most accomplished on this one. Tegan Knox, and this one kind of surprised me a little bit because it always seemed like they were trying to do something with Indi Hartwell, but it looks like Indi, unfortunately, won't be there either moving forward. And she was just on last week's SmackDown. Like she was
on Friday Night SmackDown. Yeah. I mean, but that happens all the time. It's like these decisions are made and even the people in creative aren't really told ahead of time. Sometimes they are, but it's just, I think that the basic feeling in these cases were that we're just not going to use them. And since we know we're not going to use them, we might as well cut them. Tegan Knox hadn't wrestled much. I mean, Tegan Knox probably would have had a real promising future there. She just, she blew out both of her knees. And I mean, even people in the company basically said, like, look, she was good, but she blew out both of her knees and she wasn't as good when she came back. And they gave her a little push when she started and then they gave up on her. And then Indi, they never really pushed her. I mean, I kind of got the impression she did well in NXT. I think they brought her up too soon. Her acting skill was very good. She did great angles in NXT and got really popular there. So I think the feeling was they made her champion, that to like she's popular there, let's bring her up. But then once she got up, she wasn't really a wrestler of the caliber of the women on the main roster. And so they just didn't use her much other than to be a sidekick for Candice LeRae. And then Corbin, he had a high contract, and I think that it was just one of those things when they brought him, he did well in NXT. They brought him back to the main roster, and then they just didn't do anything with him. They only have a certain number of spots. You know what I mean? They get 2 hours of TV every week on SmackDown. I think that may be a sign, since he was a SmackDown guy, that maybe they're not going to 3 hours in January. But I could be reading way too much into it, because if you go to 3 hours, then you might have time to push more people. At 2 hours, he's not making the cut. So they released him. And I mean, I would say a little surprised. He'd been there for so long, and he had a good deal of stardom at one point. He was really heavily pushed at one point. Right. So
he was kind of the guy that I don't know, as a fan and as someone who pays too much attention to this stuff, he really kind of grew on me in a weird way. Am I going to go out and say that from a wrestling standpoint, I thought he was the greatest wrestler of all time? No, but maybe it was the stuff off screen I saw too, like hearing him talk about interviews and the way that he conducted himself as a wrestler and as a heel especially. And then, if you look back at his body of work, a very character-driven wrestler, really, in a lot of ways. They tried to make him a thug. That didn't work. And so they started tagging on all these gimmicks. You had the Constable, then you had King Corbin, then you had
Happy Corbin.
Happy Corbin, which I still feel is highly underrated when bum-ass Corbin became a thing, because that was probably some of the funniest stuff to come from a guy who you wouldn't expect funny stuff to come from. But overall, I mean, a 12-year run, it's not a bad run, right? I mean, overall.
Yeah, it's more than he would have gotten, in his dreams to make the NFL. He was not an NFL caliber, but he was close. And, if he had made the NFL, he probably would have gotten 2 or 3 years at best. And here he got 12 years. He got a measure of stardom. If he wants to continue, he can. I don't know that he will. The other two, I'm sure, are going to continue. They've both already said so, especially, Stephanie Newell, which is Tegan Knox. I mean, she's going to continue. Whether it'll be in AEW, whether it'll be in TNA, whether it'll just be go back to the UK and do indies there, I don't know. But I don't see her giving up. And I don't see Indi Hartwell giving up either. Corbin, I don't know what his mentality is. He's a guy who came, straight to WWE at a high price because of they liked his size and the NFL background. Mm-hmm. And it's different. So many of the guys that come that have never worked anything but WWE, when they get cut by WWE, they go in there and go, I'm going to make it back. I'm going to show you. And then I never see them again. They don't go to indies. You know what I mean? They think that they can just write their ticket and make tons of money on the indies. And Corbin might be able, because he actually has some name value, but the guys who never got a push in WWE and then they get cut from NXT, that never make the main roster, if they want, some of them will make it back, but they are going to have to go to indies and prove themselves. Corbin won't have to do that. And like Nia Jax and so many others, I mean, in 2 years, they may just go, you know what, let's bring them back and even give them a push. Nia Jax is a champion now, and she was cut. So Braun Strowman was cut. I mean, many people have been cut and come back.
We're talking to Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer, WrestlingObserver.com. We're going to talk more with Dave about some new faces in AEW, as well as more WWE headlines on the way.
Thanks for listening to McGuire on Wrestling. To be a part of the show, follow our social media or leave a tip. Head to McGuireShow.com. This is McGuire on Wrestling.
Hey, yo, how many of you here came to listen to your same generic wrestling podcast? Or how many of you came to listen to the alternate commentary table every single Saturday?
You're going to get our perspective of what the real fans of wrestling think, and no one does it like us.
Subscribe and stream to the McGuire on Wrestling podcast feed anywhere where you're streaming your podcasts. Survey says one more for the Greek guys.
Chair shot.
Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
We're back with Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer and WrestlingObserver.com. Dave, we talked about the releases earlier on, and sometimes people come back. One guy who has now confirmed he will be coming back for his official retirement match, the one and only Bill Goldberg. Your thoughts on this? First of all, the announcement, and then we'll get into potential opponents here.
Well, I mean, he's wanted to come back for one last match. He was really bitter at WWE for not doing it. He talked to AEW about it. And then I just remember a couple months ago, he, out of the blue, just said, I'll never go to AEW. They're too cheesy. So it's kind of like, I think he may have made a WWE deal. Nobody says that unless, you know what I mean? Unless they're,
Unless there's some dry ink somewhere, yeah.
Right. And then, it took a while, but he did the angle with Gunther at the pay-per-view. And at that point, it was obvious that he's coming back for a match with Gunther. As far as, I don't know the date, a good guess would be Royal Rumble or WrestleMania. Probably WrestleMania being the number one thing, but maybe they have other plans. So, it was, he officially announced it. He's wanted to do a retirement match. I think it will be it for him legitimately. Some guys do retirement matches, obviously, and come back. I'm not saying I'm sure he won't be one of them, but I think he won't be one of them.
You're on the Team Gunther thing with this opponent, and part of it, a lot of people are saying, obviously, because of the interaction that they had in Atlanta. Other people are saying that during the SEC interview, they were showing the interaction that Bill had with Gunther. What if it's not Gunther? Who else could it be?
Well, it could be anyone, but he's clearly, like, he's the one they did the angle with. So
right.
He's the one who's the plan. If Gunther breaks his leg, it could be anyone on the roster, So
I guess what I'm wondering is the only way this would service Gunther then is for Gunther to win. Like Goldberg goes out on his back.
Yeah. It might be a thing where they have Gunther retire Goldberg and to build up Gunther. Yeah. That may be why, no doubt, if they're going to pay him a ton of money, the idea probably would be is like, look, we can build one of our top guys off that win and get something out of it in the long run. So, if he goes in there and beats Gunther in 2 minutes and then retires, Gunther's not the right guy for that. That could be, Ludwig Kaiser, actually. You know what I mean? If you want to just squash somebody who you're not really, or Dominic Mysterio would be a good one, to just go in there and be Goldberg. But if it's Gunther, I would say that the idea would be for Bill to lose. It serves no purpose for Bill to beat Gunther unless it just, like let's say Gunther's a champion, Bill beats him, and then they set up a title program. You could do it, but I think people would feel very ripped off by doing it that way.
No, I get it. Again, the entertainment fan in me loves the idea of Dominic Mysterio against Goldberg now. You've just struck a chord with me.
He's the right kind of guy because he's a guy who can lose to Goldberg and get more heat by losing. So there's a, it depends on what story you want to tell. I think that if the story is for Goldberg to just massacre somebody, I think Dominic might be my pick.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens as that match eventually gets announced here. Do you think it happens at WrestleMania? Well, if it's Gunther, it won't happen at WrestleMania. There's no way.
Why say that?
Well, it's WrestleMania, Dave.
I mean,
I guess, but I don't know. I don't know if having Goldberg in the main event now against the world champion makes much sense.
The only one would be Royal Rumble, or you could do it on the Nassau show, but I don't think, the Saturday Night's main event, but I think the Saturday Night's main event's Gunther and Priest.
Oh, yeah, no, this will be in 2025 is what they said for sure.
Yeah, right. So, I think it's Rumble or Mania. Could they, would you do it in Saudi Arabia? I mean, you could, and then maybe
the money would be there.
Well, yeah, the money's there no matter what. It's not like, but for the big spotlight, I think Mania might be the place. But
really,
I will say this. When they did the angle, in Atlanta, and I asked, and I said, is Gunther going to wrestle Goldberg at WrestleMania? And I was told no. Now, the deal might not have been completed at the time, but I was told no at that point in time that's not the place. So maybe it's the Rumble. But, no a month ago and no today are two different things, especially in wrestling.
We know Tony Khan would probably do it. I mean, he let Sting retire as a tag champion. Is there any chance WWE would retire Goldberg as a champion?
There's always a chance.
I guess, yeah.
There's always a chance.
Realistically, though, based on what we're doing, trying to build new stars.
I don't think they would do it. Sting didn't want it. Goldberg isn't going to have the same mentality as Sting. Sting really didn't want to do that. It was like everyone... Tony Khan, the Young Bucks, everyone had to just go like, no, Sting, we're not, Sting just absolutely wanted to lose that match. And everyone had to convince him, no, we're going to have this. This is the way we want to do it. The Young Bucks basically refused to win. At the end of the day. So, but it's a different dynamic. Sting had been there for 5 years.
Yeah.
Goldberg's coming in. Like I said, if he's going to go in there and retire with a win, and there's nothing wrong with that, Gunther's probably not the guy I would pick for that role. I would pick the people who we've talked about already.
All right, let's jump over to AEW. You're listening to McGuire on Wrestling with Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer and WrestlingObserver.com. We're going to dive into more potential Goldberg opponents coming up in the show as well. But right now, let's talk about AEW and guys fitting in certain roles here. There's been a lot of buzz around Jon Moxley and who could be the greatest opponent for him And I saw it was Chris Van Vliet released the list of YouTube videos that have the most views for AEW. I'm wondering if that maybe has an influence on this, but some people are saying that Orange Cassidy could be the guy they try and make a face of the company here, like in a bigger way.
I think that he's the first opponent, and he's going to wrestle him on the pay-per-view.
Right.
I think they may want to elevate him a little, but I think it's too soon for Moxley to lose, way too soon. I've had people, bring up Darby Allin, Kenny Omega could be the guy.
I think even just between those three, though, and no disrespect to anybody, I like all three for different reasons. But I mean, Kenny Omega, assuming he comes back healthy and ready to go and is on top game, I mean, you're talking different planets here, like a different layer of atmosphere of Kenny Omega versus Darby versus Orange Cassidy, aren't you?
Yes. But it also could be Will Ospreay, who is at that level of Kenny Omega.
Yeah, where is Will Ospreay in this?
Well, he's selling the injuries from Kyle Fletcher to set up the Kyle Fletcher match. Yeah. It could be, depending on, I don't feel it strong enough. I mean, Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega to me are probably the guys. The problem with MJF is that he's a heel. Mm-hmm. So for MJF to win it, Moxley's going to have to be a babyface, and I don't think that should be done right away. But I really expect like a long run by Moxley, like a 9-month thing. And by then, hopefully a lot of guys are over, you know what I mean? Who knows? Maybe Bobby I don't know. I don't like the Bobby Lashley idea, but if he gets super over, you never know. Guys, the answer really is who's going to be over in 10 months, not who's over today. Takeshita to be a baby face. It's like, I feel he's close, but I feel there's something missing in Takeshita to be that face of the company. But if you're talking about face of the company, I could see, Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega as face of the company. Darby close, Orange Cassidy, I don't know. And then there's others, but they're the ones that I feel are being pushed the strongest right now. There's Adam Cole, but Adam Cole I think he had a real rocky match on Wednesday. Not that the match was bad. I just thought that, there's a lot of things that didn't go right in that match.
There was some rust. And I don't say that saying I can out wrestle Adam Cole, but I mean, first one back on TV.
It's not even the rust. It's just the match story.
Yeah.
I think that they did a bad story and the people booed Adam Cole. Not a lot, but a little bit. And I don't think that was the goal, was for any boos for Adam Cole, especially now because Adam Cole and Max is going to be a program. So you really don't want Adam Cole cold right now.
Fair enough. You mentioned his name. Of course, he made his premiere on Dynamite this past week. The Hurt Syndicate is now a thing. MVP, Bobby Lashley, and Shelton Benjamin are the trio. Of course, we all know how this was, in a lot of ways, a giant missed opportunity in WWE. That act basically carried that pandemic era.
Yeah, they were good, and then they were going to go back to it, and then Levesque just they had already been doing vignettes to go back, so it's like for even before they went back, there was always talk of going back because it really didn't end in a good way, and there was still mileage in it. Then they were going to go back, and then all of a sudden it just got cut off, and for whatever reason. And so Tony's going to try to run with it. And, the Bobby Lashley debut got a lot of interest as far as YouTube went. I saw, that was a good sign. Does that mean it will hold up in a month? I don't know. It's first time in. Everybody seems to do well first time in as a surprise when it comes to curiosity. But the curiosity is there. If it came in and nobody cared, that'd be a different story. People did care, so you probably should go with it. And I'm sure Bobby Lashley and Swerve are going to have a big match probably on the pay-per-view. And then, we'll see what happens because that becomes a tough one. Bobby should probably win. It's his first time in, but Swerve is one of their top guys. And if you're going to do a multi-person feud, who does Swerve go with? And there's a lot of candidates, but Swerve needs to get someone on his team.
Does Swerve eventually jump over? Do they do kind of a bloodline thing with this thing? And, the enemy, my enemy is my friend.
I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't like Swerve as a heel right now. I think that Swerve should be one of the top baby faces. He's another one where, down the line, Maybe he's the guy to beat Moxley. That's another, he's another candidate. Maybe he teams Samoa Joe's coming back. Maybe you have Swerve and Samoa Joe as a team against Shelton and Bobby Lashley. There's a lot of opportunities out there.
The other question around Bobby I have for you, and this is more of an AEW fan standpoint question, just based on what you see and hear from comments. We've seen other big names and frankly big-bodied guys come in to AEW. They don't always seem to fare as well. We've never had, Wardlow's a perfect example, right? Everybody seemed to think that Wardlow was going to be on the Goldberg push back in the day, and he's been MIA ever since.
Well, he's got a bad knee, but
that too. But even
no, they botched him. They botched him when he was hot. There's no doubt. Yeah.
So when you compare a Bobby Lashley, and going back to my original point about this whole potential faces of the company thing, I can buy a Kenny Omega versus Bobby Lashley match as being something competitive and interesting. I can't buy that with an Orange Cassidy, maybe to a degree a Darby Allin, just because of the.
Well, there's a big physical difference when it comes.
Yeah.
That'll be a tough match.
But do you think AEW fans are going to bring him, take him in as well with Bobby? You think as maybe they do other new stars that come in?
We'll have to. The fans will have to wait and see.
Let me ask you this then. Instead, how about this? What does Bobby Lashley have to do, you think, maybe to relate to the AEW fans and stay in that positive light? You know what I mean?
If he performs at a high level, most will appreciate him. So it's performing at a high level. It's hard because the level there is very high. Mm-hmm. So, and it's very easy to go in there, especially you go in there, and I think Bobby's 48 or 49. And so people are waiting to say he's washed up when you're that age. So you have to prove that you're not in the long run. And it's hard. It's hard. But maybe, he's fresh coming off WWE television. He was protected pretty good in WWE. It wasn't like he was, like Shelton, who wasn't protected at all in WWE. Bobby really was a big star there that they basically just stopped using. It wasn't like they beat him to death like they usually would do for someone like that. I was surprised, if not shocked, when he was let go, because I just thought that, he was too high not high on the pecking order because they would really phase down using him, but they still had kept him strong. So him leaving, he could mean something elsewhere. You never know. First week is never a sign of like, is this going to work or not going to work? It's going to be down the line. First week was a home run. It really was, but that doesn't necessarily mean it will stay that way.
All right, last thing for you here, Dave, and then we'll talk about what people can read about in the latest edition of the newsletter. But it was announced that Nick Gage and GCW have parted ways. Now, Nick Gage was a driving force in a lot of their success, especially in that feud with Matt Cardona and getting to the next level with them. Have you heard anything on this situation at all? Any plans for Gage or whether or not,
I have not.
Money
I have
thing?
Not, I have not. I've not heard anything. Significant on that. I'll probably, in fact, I will, as soon as we get off the air, I'll actually start checking on that one.
Okay.
A little more.
All right. And last thing, I got to just toss this out there because I threw it out on our social media here. With Cody Rhodes and Liv Morgan winning these giant rings for the Crown Jewel, champion of champions here, do you think there's any possibility that we may see a future of Cody offering people the chance to kiss the ring? People are hinting at a heel turn. I'm just saying. Someday. I don't think this is the day. The day you do that is when you have a super hot young baby face who's nipping at the heels, and the older guy gets jealous of the super hot baby face usurping him, and then he goes heel on him. Right now, Cody's drawn great as a baby face, and I don't feel. Is Jey Uso that guy? I don't think so, and I don't really know who else would be. Of course, you would say someday, but then again, the one thing Cody has going for him, which is the Cena thing, and he's kind of trying to be the Cena guy anyway, is when you're doing all that charity work and everything like that, and you're willing to do it, and you're happy to do it, and you're a big star.
putting him heel's not a good place to be for somebody like that, because I know a lot of people always wanted Cena to turn. And I know like whether it was Vince, and not that Vince is always right, but I know Vince and JR and all them were always very adamant against it because they just felt in the big picture, if you look at merchandise sales and all that. And then Cody, Cody's one of the biggest. Cody's not just one of the biggest merchandise sellers in wrestling. Cody was top 5 in all sports on Fanatics, for this year. Wow. So, and when you turn someone, their merchandise sales often go down. So it's like, yeah, someday, sometime, whatever. This isn't the time for that.
All right. Well, we will see what happens. Dave, we only got a couple minutes left here. Next week, we'll talk all about Dustin Rhodes becoming a free agent. But right now, what can people read about in the Wrestling Observer?
We're just going to cover all the weekend stuff, the biggest matches and everything like that. This week we'll have, coverage of the fallout of Crown Jewel. Where the run to the begin to Saturday's main event. AEW, with the, bringing in, the Hurt Business and the run to the new thing. We're going to have a lot more on that NAL deal that we talked about, a little bit more on the releases. Hall of Fame issue is going to be in a couple of weeks. So we got that coming up. There's Power Struggle in New Japan is happening tonight, our time. So that's a real big show. And, that's, and then we'll see what, in this issue, we have a lot more on WrestleMania, actually, a lot of details on not so much anything etched in stone, but we do have things that have been talked about, including for John Cena, including for the update on the situation with Dwayne Johnson. So, that's pretty big stuff.
And in the meantime, he will be counting ballots for the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. Dave Meltzer, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, have a great week.
This is McGuire on Wrestling. If you like McGuire on Wrestling, you need to subscribe to the free McGuire on Wrestling podcast feed. Not only do you get access to the show a day early, but you also get free bonus content every week. Share a laugh with Mitch and Dimitri on the alternate commentary table.
Oh, I'm Cody Rhodes. Look at me.
Now, if this was Damian Priest, he'd apologize.
He probably would have apologized.
Follow along with the film career of one of wrestling's biggest stars with We've Seen a Movie.
Basically, I'm just watching John Cena play his wrestling character.
If John Cena was a raging alcoholic Atlantic City mooch before this.
Get all these shows, exclusive interviews, and more for free by subscribing to McGuire on Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
WWE did Goldberg dirty a few different ways, but there's nothing dirtier than when they tried to hit that lame recreation of his theme music when he got to WWE. Remember, he came out and they used like the expensive WCW version, and then they changed it and they made it so bad. And eventually he's wearing Gold Dust wig and it just got weirder from there, but nevertheless, he did get some vindication, and now, after a couple of years of honestly talking a lot of smack about WWE and Vince McMahon in particular, it looks like the fences have been mended once again, and Goldberg made the announcement. If you missed it, here it is, him announcing that he will be having his retirement match sometime in WWE in 2025.
In 2025, Goldberg's having his retirement match. Let's go! So, I think we know who the subject or the victim, probably the front runner right now. We know who it is.
Victim,
100%. But 2025, Goldberg makes his retirement match.
Can't wait,
bro.
Yeah, I got a couple months to get ready. No date, no time. So we'll see.
There you have it. The hosts of SEC for ESPN were excited, but nobody more excited than the man that joins me right now from his home in Mississauga, Ontario. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Joe Aguinaldo is here. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good, buddy. Thanks for coming on for this segment here. No yay boo on Crown Jewel overall, but you did say there was a moment that stood out to you on the show yesterday.
There were a few.
Okay.
If I may get on my
I'll give you one yay, one boo. What's your best ones?
Yay, Chelsea Green. She was amazing in that tag match. The boo? The whole Bloodline thing, I am so done with Bloodline.
I think if we ever go back to anytime you and I have ever talked about the bloodline, I mean, this can go back to the old show even.
Yeah.
I think you've always said that line. You always lead with that. I am so done with this bloodline thing. Well,
yeah, no, they're not, and I get it, but I did skip most of the first match because it was bloodline. I wanted to just get through it. So I watched the end. I watched the Sami Zayn thing, and I was like, whatever, same old, and then that was it. So those are my two big yays and boos. All
right. Again, if you want to leave your feedback on the show, actually, you know what? Some people did that. Let's give a quick shout out to them because they take the time to comment. Craig Usher actually thought the show was great top to bottom. The Bloodline saga actually continues to get interest for him, but Liv Morgan stole the show.
I thought the card was pretty good.
So. Yeah, and a lot of the consensus I've seen, read, and heard was the same. A solid show, not a must-see for any purpose whatsoever, but also at the same time, not a show you drag on here. Greg from the Peg, really hoping the Bloodline feud ends in Vancouver, so he's on Team Aguinaldo for sure. My buddy Kevin Jesus in Edmonton, Alberta. You got to understand, this has been a running joke since I've known Kevin in college. Okay. Right. He says there was a back rake seconds into the opening match. Greatest event in recent memory. He went to school, and I tried to get in. I was too much of a dork. I don't know. But they always had this thing where if a back rake took place in a match, it was the greatest thing ever. To the point that Edge and Eddie Guerrero had a main event match. Brock had a title match actually in the middle of the show, but they did that mid-show main event thing. So right. Edge and Eddie Guerrero were the main event. And all night, Kevin and his buddies were doing, rake his back, rake his back. So for the final spot in the match, and I have photos of it and everything, Edge is holding up his hands like this, like, yeah, you want me to do it? And he rakes Eddie's back. And dude, you'd think that he had just won the world championship, like just for doing that back rake. It was amazing. Oh, one here from Jake says, excellent main event, exceeded his expectations. He's sad Gunther didn't win, but didn't damage him whatsoever. No, I thought honestly it was the perfect finish. I liked it all. I really liked that Cody Gunther match.
You could say the same about Liv and Nia Jax. Like the loss didn't hurt Nia at all either. No. And so I was pleasantly surprised by both of the what do you call it? Those like title versus the World Series matches.
Champion of Champions.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
And let me ask you this question now. I asked Meltzer already. And I've also posted it on the Facebook page. How long until Cody invites people to kiss the ring?
Oh, dear.
Little ROH throwback for you. Come on.
I'm going to give the over-under Royal Rumble. That's my over-under.
If you ever get to do a meet and greet with him, anybody, if he happens to be wearing that ring, please ask to kiss the ring and send us the picture.
Absolutely.
I think that would be perfect. All right. Let's get down to what we were going to talk about, though, Joe, and that is Goldberg announcing his last match, and it's going to happen sometime in 2025. Now, Meltzer's convinced it's going to be Gunther. A lot of people are convinced it's going to be Gunther. Dave even went as far a few minutes ago to say that it could be a WrestleMania main event.
Oh,
now, I don't see how they work that unless Goldberg, A, wins the Royal Rumble, or B, wins Elimination Chamber, because that's how we set these matches.
Yeah.
Or C, Gunther's not world champion anymore.
Ooh.
So where do we go from here? I don't know, but what are your feelings on Gunther before we start maybe coming up with our own suggestions here? And I'll hit you with the one Dave gave a few minutes ago, too.
Based on what's been happening lately with, the whole... Bret Hart is my second favorite wrestler, and then Goldberg's my favorite wrestler, when Gunther said that. And then I think it was in Atlanta or whatever when he sort of took shots at Goldberg. So that would make sense based on current storylines. And I'll tell you, I've never been the biggest Goldberg fan, but I understand and I get his place in wrestling history. I would be interested in seeing a Goldberg versus Gunther match. I think it'd be a hard hitting match. I would love to see Gunther get the win, but I just, that's an intriguing matchup for me as someone who, grew up watching Goldberg, back in that Monday Night War era.
Well, I think Gunther could be a guy that would have Goldberg looking at the lights. I think that would be believable. As far as the other side of the spectrum, because Dave pitched this too, like what if it's a 2.5 minute match? And then he said, this is what made me laugh so hard, and I am all in on this, and I almost want to start an online campaign right now to begin it. Dominic Mysterio.
Oh my God.
Right?
Make that happen.
Right.
Triple H, if you are listening to this, Dominic Mysterio, please. Oh my God. Wow.
Wherever you are right now, get on all your social media, tag #Maguire on Wrestling or #Team MOW, but please # Dom versus Goldberg.
Oh my, and you know what? That is a 2-minute match that will get insane heat. And if Dom loses a 2-minute match to Goldberg, it's not gonna hurt him whatsoever.
Dude, it's the perfect match.
Oh my God, somebody make this happen. Please, please,
you can throw out anybody else you want. And this is what makes it a lot harder now to continue with what we were going to talk about. So maybe this is where we wrap it. I don't know. But
I almost wish you would save this for the end.
I know. Because what do you do to follow that? I mean, well, Braun Strowman again? Yeah, who cares?
Whatever. Yeah. Well, that is amazing.
I know.
That would be so good. I highly doubt it'll happen, but that would be wow.
I brought you on to give a list of potential opponents here for Goldberg, but really there's only 2 now.
Yeah,
let's be completely real here. Goldberg versus Gunther, if he's going out looking at the lights. If Goldberg's going over winning, then it better be a smear of Dominic Mysterio on the canvas at the end of it.
Yes, then that would be. I mean, how you would get there would be an intriguing storyline.
You don't have to do anything. It can show up. You know what? This could be the reverse of Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes, and we find out who his mystery opponent is. And
God.
As soon as you hear Dom's music hit, oh my God.
Wow. Okay. All right. So the Dom thing aside, because that is incredible. But again, you know what? I can't even talk about Gunther now. This is insane.
I know. It takes over all your thoughts, right? #GoldDom with 2 D's in the middle, okay? 2 D's in the middle. #GoldDom, Goldberg versus Dominic Mysterio for WrestleMania. You know,
I'm so into that. That's it. We're done. This segment's over.
I've done some great things in my career. I've done some amazing things in my career, but this might be the pinnacle right here. Well, I don't think we can go anywhere from here. That's the show, friends.
No, that's tough.
We've blown the entire show right there on one match idea. If you have a suggestion that you think can beat Dominic Mysterio versus Goldberg, feel free to let us know. Team MOW, Maguire on Wrestling on Facebook. You can find me at Maguire Show on all the socials. And you know what? I will tag Joe in the posts as well so he can see what comes in. And you should follow him too. He's a good dude. Posts a lot of pictures of boats that come into the harbor next to his work. But I like the boat pictures. I like them a lot. That wraps it up for another week of Maguire on Wrestling. Next week, a special show because I will actually be in Calgary for Dungeon Wrestling's November Pain. So I'll keep you posted on social as to what we're going to be posting, what we're going to be updating here. It may be a best of show, honestly, but then we're going to follow with a killer show afterwards because the show happens on Sunday. We produce this on Sunday. You get where I'm going here. But either way, always content there. Andy will be back this Wednesday with another edition of his show from across the pond, and that is, of course, Legends and Champions. Look back at the legacy of TNA wrestling, and, of course, the alternate commentary guys, and more. Joe, thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Until next time, thank you for listening, and let me do what I do. Play safe, drive safe. Be seeing ya.
Maguire on Wrestling. Online and on the radio. Listen to the show Mondays at 4 p.m. Mountain Time at CKXU.com, wherever you get your podcasts, and at MaguireShow.com.